Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Village Rails, which is a small box tableau builder card game designed by Matthew Dunstan and Brett J. Gilbert. This one accommodates 2 to 4 players and is published by Osprey Games. Now before I get started on my review of Village Rails, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer here in the UK, and if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so Village Rails is going to look like this when it's set up. You're going to have a supply of coins, you're going to have a big deck of double-sided cards, and on one side you're going to have these kind of railway cards that look like this, and you're going to stack a column of 7 of those, which is going to be where you're going to draft these rails from. You're also going to have on the reverse side these objective cards that look like this, and there's always going to be 4 of those on display. You've got a deck of these Terminus cards, and at any time throughout the game, each player is going to have 3 of those in their hand, and these are a way that you're going to replenish your money throughout the game to make sure you get the cards that you really want to place onto your personal tableau, which will look a bit like this once I've advanced a few rounds. So basically each round is going to consist of placing a railway track and optionally one of these objective cards. So again, this would be completely bare at the beginning of the game, so I've actually played through 7 rounds here already because I've played 7 cards. Now these frames are purely there for player order, but you can also see that they actually have some inbuilt terrain types and objective kind of goals here inbuilt onto the frame, which actually do count towards scoring, so bear that in mind. Also, each player is going to have one of these scoring counters, which simply tracks how well you're doing. And there's a couple of reference cards here. These are double-sided, so on one side you're going to show all the different terrain types. So you've got 5 different types of cards, as well as all the different scoring criteria. So you can see here that these kind of sign symbols look like this, and they're going to score you points based on the numbers in the red circle there. So that's going to be basically 9 points for that line. These little barn or little station symbols are going to score you points based on how many of that type of terrain are currently on that track when it scores. So you can see here that this is like one of these cow cards, this is another cow one, and this is another cow one. So at the moment, each of these symbols is going to score 3 points. So at the moment, that's going to be a 6-point line, but it's not even finished yet because each line doesn't finish until the rail finishes to the end of the track, goes off into the ether basically, like this one is here, because you are only ever building a 4x3 grid. The little tractor symbol here gets you a point for each different type of terrain on that line. So you can see here this one has 1, 2, 3 different types by having this kind of grain one, this water one, and the cow one. So at the moment that one's scoring 3 points, but of course that one's not finished yet either. The signals are going to score you points based on a sliding scale. So the more signals you have on a rail, the more points you'll get. 1 will get you no points, but if you have 4 or more, you can get up to 24 points, which is quite a hefty amount. And the end game scoring is going to be these little switch signals here, which means that basically at the end of the game, for each railway that you have or each line that you have with one of these symbols on, you're going to score an amount of points. But if you have 2 on the same line, it's still only going to count as 1. So ideally you want to get as many different ones as you can to get a massive 49 points. Okay, so turn structure in this game could not be more simple, where you're going to mandatorily take one of these railway cards, and optionally you can take one of these objective cards. Now when you take these rail cards, you always have the option to take the bottom one here for free, but for every one you want to skip over, you're going to have to pay a coin for. So let's just say I really wanted, let's say this one here, without putting any thought into this, I would have to put a coin on this card in order to take this card. Now, if I wanted the one after it, I'd also have to put a coin on this one. So this is quite a familiar mechanism for you who play quite a lot of games. And then you're going to place it somewhere on your tableau, bearing in mind that you can't just spawn it in the middle of nowhere. You need to build on where you have existing railway lines, or of course from the frame when you start. But let's just say I shoved it on here like this, again, without putting any thought into this, like so. Now, optionally, I can choose to spend 3 coins in order to take one of these objective cards, and then an additional coin for every card I skip over, much like the railway cards. But let's just say I spent my 3 coins to the bank, like so, and then I skipped this one over, and then I ended up taking this one. Now, each of these different lines, bearing in mind we have, 7 of them here, we can assign 2 objective cards to. So technically I could do this if I wanted to, or I could put it on any of the other ones. But let's just say I put it on here as it's the one I've just finished. And whenever you finish one of these lines, as in the rail is going off into the ether, off the map there, because you are only building a 4x3 grid, then you're going to score it. So let's calculate how the scoring works here, just as an example. So this is going to say, the tractor is going to be for every different terrain types that I've built on the line. So that's going to be 4 different terrain types, which is quite nice. That's going to be 4 points. That's going to do nothing for me. That's going to be for end game scoring, if you remember, based on the end of the game little sliding scale here. And this one here is going to get me a point for every one of these terrains that I pass. So that's only going to be 1. So at the moment it's going to be 5 points. But additionally, I did assign an objective to it, and it says to get 2 points per type of feature on the line. So that's going to be another 1, 2, 3 points. Also, once a line is complete, you're going to assign one of these Terminus cards to it. Let's just say, for example, I chose to put this one on, which has the number of objective cards I have assigned to the line. I'm going to get 0, 5, or 8 coins, depending on that. But I've got one objective card here, which is not pretty good. And then I'm going to cover this up to show that I can't add any more cards onto that line. And of course, because I've got one objective card, I'm going to get 5 coins to play with to give me a better chance of getting the cards I actually want. And once you've assigned your Terminus card, you're always going to draw back up to 3. And you can see these do lots of different things, such as the number of different signals you have, or the number of the signals you have on the line, the number of these signs you have on the line, the number of these tractors you have on the line, etc. So you can really tailor your your money earning to what you've built. And of course, once a player has completed the turn, all of these are going to shuffle down, ready for the next player, like so. So there's always going to be, again, 7 of these railway cards and 4 of these objective cards in the display. But as you can see now, I've placed a coin on the bottom card. Now, if my opponent was to take this card, they're also going to get the coins assigned to it. So you've got to be very careful about the opportunities you're leaving to your opponents, because as the game goes on, these can really build up and acquire quite a lot of money. Let's just do another couple of scoring examples. So let's just say I finished this line here. So this one's going to, again, score me a point for every different terrain type I've passed through. So it's only going to be 2 points there, but I've got 2 of these different signals there. Therefore, that's going to score me 8 points. That line's going to give me 10 points. And of course, I would assign a Terminus card to it. And on this one, I've done it based on the tractors. I've got 1 tractor there. Therefore, it's going to get me 5 coins. And as a final example here, let's show you this one down here. So I've just knocked everything. This one is going to get me 9 points based on the points just here. But I've also assigned an objective there, so it's going to get me 6 points because every terrain type on the line is the same. And once your tableau is fully completed, as in there's that 4x3 grid, every slot is filled, and you're going to calculate who's got the most points, adding on any money you have. I think it's 1 point for every 3 coins you have, and adding on those railway lines. And the player with the most points at the end of the game will be the winner. And let's just show you a few examples of these objective cards to give you an idea of what's in the deck. So you've got this one here that says you get 2 points per type of feature on the line, or this one here says for if you have more of a certain terrain type than any other terrain, you'll get X amount of points. You get 9 points minus 1 point per track on the line, so you really want a nice short one there. If you have at least one type of terrain but fewer than the other types, then you'll get 6 points, or exactly 3 types of the terrain on the line, then you'll get 6 points, etc. And there's a whole ton of these because you can see that the deck is reversible. There are duplicates in there, but there's still a good range. Okay, so let's share some thoughts on Village Rails. Now you can probably tell this game is very puzzly in its nature. You're trying to spin a lot of plates here, and I like the fact that when you do something, it's going to contaminate something else, because again you've got this kind of cross-hatching of all the railway tracks, and it's all about trying to min-max every single thing you can do. Trying to get as many signals as you can on a line. Trying to get as many of the, the points grabs you can. And I like the way that it kind of synergizes with the objective cards to try and get the most you can. But it all kind of ties back to the draft and how much money you have in your supplies to play with. And that not only relies on the money that other people leave for you, because you might think this card isn't ideal for me, it's pretty good, but it's got a lot of money assigned to it, therefore I'm happy to take it because it will keep me going another turn and keep my caches of money full, I suppose. And I also like the fact that you have to kind of spin these plates off. Yeah, I've got this long elaborate line here that's going to get me a lot of points. I'm not willing to finish it yet, but I'm running out of cash, therefore I'm going to do a nice little quick line here, like maybe something like this. Maybe I have the perfect Terminus card to go with it, just to give me a nice bunch of money to go again. Like for example, if I did finish that line and I had 2 of those little points grabs there, and I assigned this card to it, that's a massive 7 points ready to play with again. Sorry, 7 coins ready to play with again, and keep me going for a while. So that's a nice little touch there, managing which lines you can throw away, which ones are going to give you the big points, and what objective cards are going to line up. Again, always relying on how much money you have, because especially the objective cards, they're not cheap. You have to spend 3 coins at least, and then potentially more than that if there's a perfect one there ready for the taking. I do enjoy how the game becomes more restrictive as it progresses, because you are literally only building out 12 cards here on your line, and you might be building up this elaborate scoring, maybe 2 of them, and there's a meeting point there, but you can't quite find the final piece of the puzzle to match them up perfectly. Therefore, you're going to have to compromise one to score the other, or at least not optimally score both. And I like the way that works. So it's actually quite brain burnery here, trying to min-max everything, trying to gaze over what's available to you and see which ones, identify which one's best for your little tableau. I think the game strikes a nice balance between being very accessible yet pretty thinky at the same time. I mean, in isolation, this part of the game is, it's puzzly, and you're trying to obviously math out all the different lines and stuff. But the fact that there are different layers to the game in terms of the Terminus cards and the objective cards, it just takes it to that next level, and it's going to add another moment to the game to make you stop and think about your turns a little bit more. The player interaction in the game does stem back to the drafting, and it's quite nice that you do have this currency in the game as well, because when you keep skipping over things, you're going to leave opportunities for your opponents to grab the money and potentially use that to hurt you in the future. So you do have this little economy part of the game, as well as the open drafting. The time investment is pretty good. You are looking at around 30 to 45 minutes to play this. To be honest, I think 45 minutes is going to be a rare occasion it takes that long, unless you're fully min-maxing every placement. But it's nice that you can play a pretty, thinky little filler game in that amount of time. So yeah, it's not just a go through the motions and throw things away and just see what happens. You are going to actually have some decisions to make here, considering this is still a light game. The production for the game is of a good standard. I like the way the cards look, and the iconography is generally decent as well. I suppose the only criticism I have is that a couple of the terrain types look quite similar, especially if you're colorblind, and therefore you have to look at these little icons, and sometimes they can be quite hard to identify because they're hidden behind artwork, etc. But that's a very minor nitpick. The card size is perfect. When you're playing this at 4 players or so, it's not going to be too much of a table hog, and it's nice it all goes back to this nice little charming small box. Okay, so let's share some final thoughts on Village Rails. Now, this is a nice game. I do feel like it doesn't do anything tremendously new. There are a lot of games out there like this, these small, compact little tableau builders. Thinking of games such as Village Green, which ironically is by the same publisher. And I actually do think I prefer this game to Village Green, because you have that tangible nature of the puzzle with the railway lines. I think that's a really cool touch. Also games like Spiralopolis, this reminds me of, and I say this is up there with them. This is a solid design. It's a nice, charming, little concise game that you can get played in half an hour. You're going to have some decisions to make here. I like the little economic edge of it, that you do need money to draft the cards you want, rather than, I actually think this adds to the game rather than taking away from it, because you could have just had a very simple open draft. But yeah, I do like that idea of the incentive building, leaving opportunities for your opponents, and making sure you have money in your supply to keep getting the cards you want. The objective cards, again, I think they add to the game rather than subtract to it. It doesn't add any convolution. They're all pretty self-explanatory and they make sense. And I do like the way you have to manage your little Terminus cards here. But despite me liking every individual element of it, I do feel like it's got its limits. I can definitely see me playing this, maybe 5 times and being done with it, because there isn't that much room to explore, despite the deck being a nice big thick deck of cards there. And it does feel like you're always doing the same thing. Some of these lines feel more satisfying than others. Like when you're getting a big chunk of points from doing this, it feels great. But then if you get a symbol like this that says, get a point for every that type of terrain you cross through, it doesn't quite feel as strong. So yeah, it's like managing the two, doing quick little grabs, getting a few points here and there, and maybe balancing that with a Terminus card to get you more money, or getting 1 or 2 lines that are going to score you all your bulk of your points. I do like it. It's very puzzling in its nature. I tend to like puzzly games, but as I said, I think the replayability factor is lacking somewhat here. I'm glad I've played it. And one thing that glaringly stood out for me is that the game does not have a solo mode. Now, I'm not a solo gamer, but for me, this had all the hallmarks and was just a no-brainer to have a solo mode to it because, there's very little interaction there, and you could easily do a few modifications to make this soloable. Maybe again take out the money and do some open draft and lose a card at random, each turn or something to to keep you on your toes. That could easily be house rule, but I'm just surprised that the game didn't come with a solo mode. So that was a big surprise for me. But yeah, a nice, charming little game. I would give it a soft recommendation because it is affordable. It's not going to take up much space on your shelf, but bearing in mind that it's going to have its limits, you're probably going to play it a few times and be ready to move on. So that is Village Rails by Matthew Dunstan and Brett Gilbert.